end our meeting, and then we will post a meeting probably maybe Thursday
We'll
night.
adjourn our meeting. And
Adjourn
then
our meeting.
We'll go to a.
We'll have to schedule another meeting. Okay, thank you. I'm
Okay.
just looking for some help on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nope.
Thank you, Greg.
I'll be back.
So, Steve, apologize for that.
Oh, no worries.
Thanks for coming in. So, do we want to ask him to do the same thing that everybody else
Sure,
did,
of
even though
course.
you're an internal candidate? If you could just start by just
Feels
telling
better
us
when it's like over here. Just
start by telling us a little bit about your qualifications and why you're interested in this position.
okay. Well, I did go to Hope College and intended to go into public accounting. I had an accounting degree. Fortunately, I was able to obtain an internship here at Lowell Light Power that started June 1st, 2009. So I've actually been in the industry for 7 years already. I had the chance to go into public accounting, but I did not for a couple of reasons. My dad is the city attorney of Zeeland and has been since he was the age of 28, and he's 63 now. And he's been involved in local government, city council meetings, local politics for the last 35 years. And I didn't know it until I was in local politics myself that I have an interest in it. Second, I love the energy business, and it's a lot more exciting than a lot of people think, and at least I get excited about it. And third, Mary, my boss at the time, was at the age where she was ready to retire, and I had that opportunity to step in and fill her shoes. So that's kind of my history. But over the last 7 years, I've learned under Greg Pierce, obviously, and as well as many people from the MPPA. I've had 13 weeks since Greg's retired to get my feet wet, acting as the assistant general manager and doing many things he would have done, as well as maintaining my controllership role. So that's a little bit about my background in the industry and why I'm here today. And the position's open, and I know I can do it, and it's something that I want to do, and I believe I have the support of the people here at Lowell Light and Power. I hope the board and the council to keep this place going forward and do bigger and better things.
So you've had however many weeks it's been.
13.
13.
Since March
Yeah,
25th.
well, yeah. 13
So we're a
months.
quarter of a year in already.
So you've had, a couple of months as acting general manager in a sense. How would you describe your management style? And what have you learned about your management style in these last several weeks?
I believe, I believe there's a difference between management and leadership. And I think to be a great leader, there are times where you need different management styles. There are times where you need to be a coach and teach someone. There are times where I think there's 6 management styles technically according to the book. You need to be a pace setter where you have a lot of motivated people and you just need to go. I think over the last 13 weeks, I've been a little bit more authoritative. The morale around here was good, but not great. I think there's always been a rift between the distribution department and generation department and the office staff that may or may not be known to the entire board. And I've implemented monthly meetings for the last 4 months with the entire staff, and it's my feeling that people are working harder and better than they have. I also believe in a democratic management style in terms of getting employees and community buy-in, whether that's the board or the council. I know I sat down with the mayor right when I started, a couple weeks in, and we sat down for an hour and a half and talked about many different things. So in terms of my management style, I know there's many different styles and people might tend towards one, but over the last 13 weeks, I think I've had to adjust my management style depending on if it's Julie and Gail or Megan that I'm working with, or if I'm working with the line staff. People that I haven't been in charge of, and we need to set a clear direction what's going to happen. And even to the point of, I sat the entire company down and said, we're a department of the city, we're going to be working together, and we're going to act like it. And we're going to talk positively about everyone here within the city. So that's a little bit more authoritative and direct. So I really tailor it depending on the situation, if that answers your question.
I'm going to go out with Doug. I mean, we kind of have a set of questions that we're trying to ask every applicant to compare apples to apples. Some of them, I think, don't apply as much because already being an employee and already have been here. How would you, that obviously you're aware of some conflicts that have gone on with the Lowell Light and Power Board and the city council, and what are your strengths and what do you possess that would help you move towards a resolution if one should arise?
A resolution between Light and Power and the city, and
Yeah, I mean, just the whole harmony of the community.
right. Well, I do feel myself as a person that's a communicator, and I've been told I'm a communicator. I have an open door, but having an open door, but not having the willingness to actually implement or hear their side or act on their side or talk about their side, it's really not an open door. But I feel I do have an open door. I'm willing to listen, talk with people, and sit down and say, hey, I'm willing to listen to your side. I'm willing to communicate. As long as you're willing to listen to mine, we'll look at the economics, we'll look at the intangibles, we'll look at what's best for the community, and then make a decision instead of talking about things through the paper, through public meetings. I'm a person who lets just sit down and hash it out. I mean, I've never had a problem communicating with people. I've never had a problem working something out. And I don't think I ever will, because I'm just willing to work with people.
Okay. You also obviously are very young. You'll have employees that are older than you.
Yep.
You'll have situations that will arise, that could arise. How would you, again, knowing that, the union, that didn't, I think it went better than the union negotiations for Lowell Light and Power went a little bit faster and a little bit better than I think for the city. But again, we're kind of lumped in the same boat. How would you handle those things? How would you handle the, if you're the general manager and people are reporting to you, but they're 20 years your senior? I mean, how do you cope with that? How do you deal with that?
Well, let me give you an example, and then I'll answer your question. I know what you're saying about my age, and I respect that, but I'm going to disagree with anyone who has the perception that age makes a difference in terms of being able to manage or lead. I had the opportunity to handle an altercation between two Light and Power employees in the distribution department that got pretty ugly. The police were called by one person, and Greg had announced his retirement, and I sat down with both of them, handled the entire situation throughout. I gave very pointed directions of how we're going to handle our business, what my expectations of each of them are. I know Mark Droge very well, but I looked him right in the eye and said, you need to be treating everyone in this company fairly. And all reports from that situation are things have gotten better and there's been healing. I think a lot of the
Could
union...
you just back up, just
Yes.
because this is on record? Because I just wanted to understand that the police weren't called in by Mark Drew.
No,
Okay.
he was just involved in the situation. It's
Because
over.
he-
No,
because he was
no
a
one hit each other or anything like
Because he
that.
was a supervisor.
Right.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanted the public to be,
Yeah, and it was one of the more serious disagreements that we've had within the company that I've been here, but I've seen approaches where we've kind of let things go or slide under the rug here since I've been here. But my standpoint is you address it, you nip it in the butt, and you move on. You can't let things...
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just wanted the public, when you had mentioned the name,
In regards to union negotiations, I don't have any problem with the IBW, and I don't have any problem negotiating. I think, in my view and hindsight, a lot of this could have been avoided with better communication of why certain things were done at Light and Power in the city. And if we had more buy-in, this could have been avoided. In terms of negotiation, though, in the future, my style would be to sit down with the union steward, the rep at the IBEW, this is where Lowell Light and Power is coming from. We're a local government. We're responsible to the people of this city. We have that due diligence, but we also have to treat employees fair and really just talk it out. A lot of it's just communicating, talking things out.
So what from your past experience do you think, what skills have you developed that would help you in a situation like that, in a negotiation? Because you haven't gone through, I'm making an assumption here, based on your resume, you haven't gone through the process of having to negotiate union contracts or anything like that. So what experience do you have that you think you can bring to the table that's going to help you in that process if and when it comes up again?
Yep, I think first and foremost, we have to look at industry standards to make sure that what we're offering is fair. I think that's a great place to start in any contract. Look what other utilities, other municipals are doing in the state and the country, and kind of a baseline, look at where current employees are, and then look at the financial condition of the company and what we can afford. In terms of actual negotiating experience, I've never been part of an IBEW union negotiation, but to go through that negotiation, those are the things I would use, more of the economic factors of the company, what the industry standards are, and then just communicate those. And if there's a concern on their end, and why is there concern? Why do you think your request should be granted, or why do you need this benefit, and is it really in line with what's practical? So that's how I would go about it.
You wanna jump in or?
Sure.
Or,
Yeah, I just want to start from our list, I guess, and then we'll get into the freelance stuff. So you've been here for 7 years, so you know Lowell fairly well. But based on what you know of Lowell, the community, the city, and the whole community, what are the major challenges and opportunities for the city and the community of Lowell over the next 10 years? And how can Light and Power be a positive impact in those challenges and opportunities?
Well, I know from 2000 to 2014, the population of Lowell has dropped by, I think, between 3 and 5%. So that's actually, to me, that's somewhat of a threat. Why are people leaving? In terms of an opportunity, the location, the topography, the activities here are great. And I think this is a community people would want to move to and be part of. Lowell Light and Power is the opportunity, I believe, for major economic development. We do have reliable public power, we do have affordable rates, and we can offer potentially other services like fiber, potentially be a natural gas supplier. And I think the opportunity for Lowell would bring business to Lowell, which will create jobs, bring wealth to the community. So wherever there are jobs, wherever there's business, people will come. So when I see the population drop over the last 14 years, why is that? I don't know if it's the roads or the price of water or the price of the property taxes or what, but I think Lowell Light and Power is the opportunity to help in economic development, which is something that I don't know we have done necessarily in terms of bringing businesses to Lowell. But I do know the APPA's economic development programs and bigger utilities really play on that. And it's a major driver for businesses coming to communities.
So what would you, sorry, Andrew, if you don't mind my follow-up, what would you see as your role, if you're the general manager, what would you see as your role in that, and how would you coordinate that with the city in terms of economic development?
Right. First, I don't know, I know Lowell Light and Power does not have an effective communication and PR department, and we don't do that. I don't even know if people are aware of our rates and how much they could save or the benefits of being here. Something like that would start from the general manager to implement a permanent policy, pay for someone who's in marketing, get involved with the city, get involved with the chamber, and really lead that charge. I know there are programs through the APPA that could be looked at and headed up. That would also be something the general manager, I believe, that would be the charge of a general manager to do something like that.
I got three. I'm gonna lump them all together because they're what I asked of one of the other candidates. Number one, and I'll give you the three and then you can answer those. Number one, employee numbers. Do you think we're at the number that we need to be and need to change? Number two, facilities. Do we have the facilities that we need? Are they satisfactory? Do we need to change? And number three, what would you, Greg Pierce was, I believe, was a great general manager, retired, but what would you do differently that Greg did, that you, and be specific, because I asked the other candidate to be specific, that you would do different than what our previous general manager did? And you can take those in any order you want.
Employees, the line department, I've talked with Ryan about this multiple times. He believes we're in a great place. When John comes back, he's on workers' compensation. We're going to be in a great place. Doug Barnes, I've talked with him about how much longer he would like to work, and he said he's willing to work forever. So I know he's over 60, and that's not a bad thing, but I would still like to find someone who is able to do what he can do. Generators are not just a simple equipment where you touch a button. You need to understand how the software works. If there was a problem, the carbon, NOx, SOx emissions, that's someplace that I believe Lowell Light and Power needs to make a plan of action. In terms of the office staff, if I were to be the general manager, after going through the last 13 weeks, I know I could be your general manager and also maintain the high-level controllership role. I don't think I would be overwhelmed. I know I could do it, which would mean we would not need to hire another controller. I believe we have adequate staff in Julie and Megan to take more of my day-to-day duties. Megan has an accounting degree. I believe Julie has an associate's in accounting, which means we would need to hire one more customer service staff person that would handle payments, bank reconciliations, the payments at the front, the mail, as well as I would like this person to be a writing, PR focused type of person that could handle really on the image of Lowell Light and Power that kind of has been put on the back burner. So to answer your question, someone to fulfill Doug's shoes in the future, and if I were to be selected, someone else for customer service with Julie and Megan kind of backfilling my role. Second, the facilities. I think Chatham, I know Chatham is fine for what we have right now. It holds our trucks, it holds our inventory, it holds our equipment. This building is going to need repair in the engine room, the roof, and eventually we need to develop a long-term plan for that space because there are asset retirement costs to everything. You know, you can't just retire and say an asset's going to be gone and just leave it there forever. So I have no problem looking at the economics of us moving, and that plays into my third point. But if we need to go to, I mean, I know we've looked at Superior, we've looked at St. Mary's. We talked briefly about us moving to Chatham. People have talked about us going to City Hall. I don't have any problem looking at the economics, but I do love this building. It's historic, it's been around. I think people know it as Light and Power, but I have no problem looking at the economics if we could save money to move. But I also do not believe we need to be in the same space to have good camaraderie. I think the morale and the camaraderie has improved tremendously in the last 3 months, and I don't think we all need to be housed in the same building to make that happen. I know Greg had a different opinion than I'm telling you right now, but I've seen the change. So in terms of us getting over there, I don't think that needs to happen. Third question, what would I do differently? A couple things. I'm really big into looking at, I mean, just my own personal belief, and I've always thought this way, I'm not just saying this. Lowell Light and Power is a government. Governments are in debt. They have a bad reputation, and they do not, I mean, they spend money. I'm a big believer in looking at the economics of things, and we've made a lot of decisions on big ticket items, and I want to be more transparent with why those decisions are being made and look at the numbers. A couple specific examples. I've always believed we should be purchasing a gas compressor instead of leasing one. I was always a believer that we should have a replacement transformer for Atwood than not have a replacement one. It costs us north of $20,000, but if that transformer ever went down, we'd pay over $100,000 to bring in generators and pay fuel, and it would be a terrible PR move. And we're already collecting extra money for them being on the transformer ownership rate, or the primary meter rate instead of the transformer ownership rate. I'm really big into looking at, if you look at the numbers, and a lot of business type of decisions, they'll play out for themselves, or at least you can know that and then make a decision on the intangibles or if there's other benefits that the community sees. But I'm a big person in looking at the numbers, especially since we're a government and we, I believe, owe that to the customers. I'm not saying Greg didn't do that, but I think we could have been better.
Can I back up just a little bit and follow up on something you said? You had mentioned that, when you were talking about staffing, that if you did move into that general manager role, that you'd like to control that, or maintain that high-level controller
Correct.
position. How do you, yes, you've been doing it for a period of time.
Right.
And I know you'd kind of backfill staffing to help deal with some day-to-day.
Right.
But how do you think that would impact your GM role if you maintain that high level? Thinking about
Getting things done?
getting things done, not having you burn out in a couple of years. Some of those.
Well, the
types of
only
things.
reason I say that is I made interview, I want to show what I can do. In the last 13 weeks, we've completed the interchange substation maintenance project, the SCADA project, developed a high-level equipment replacement plan. I've made a presentation to the council, got our budget approved, which to me is a major accomplishment that, not that we're doing anything we shouldn't be, but that I was able to communicate to them effectively that this is why Lowell Light and Power has the budget it does, and this is why we have the financial targets and the revenue and the expenses, and we had consensus from them. I've headed up a voice over IP phone project that we have starting. I have key department heads on board for fiber to city facilities. I've advanced talks with natural gas to Lowell, and within the last week, I got huge news that we have an option to potentially add another 4.5 months of supply. Talked about selling the diesels. Got our 5-year system plan approved, and this is in 13 weeks, and I've been doing my normal job. So my feeling is, if I can do this in 13 weeks doing 2 jobs, and I don't mean to be arrogant, but if I could have someone at least alleviate a lot of my normal day-to-day duties and I could focus even more on the general manager type role and the high-level controller stuff, the annual audit, the long-range plan, assisting with the preparation of the monthly income statement, the PCA calculation, some high-level stuff that maybe it's a day a week. And so that's what I mean. So I'm really confident in my ability to do both,
And
just based on the last 13 weeks of doing
Right.
both complete jobs.
And then where does your role fit in terms of the community? As if you were GM, I know you had talked about wanting to maybe bring in someone who has PR and communication. Very good idea, just saying. But what is your role then as general manager? How would you see your role in this community?
I believe the general manager should make every effort to schedule vacations around city council meetings and board meetings, because I believe it's important to be there, and I'm not just saying that. My dad has not missed a council meeting in 35 years, because that's how he planned his vacation. When you're in a role like this, you need to acknowledge that the public and the board and the council, are your boss, they're the people paying your salary, and you need to make every fair and honest effort to be part of city functions and be involved and to know what's going on, and even if it's just showing face and letting people know that you care and that you're willing to be there. In terms of other roles within the community, I do think it's important to at least live here. And my wife and I, for the last year, we've been looking for houses within the Lowell community so we can send our kids to school. I do know as a public servant, you need to be involved. You're not just here for the check.
Thank you. Sorry, Andrew.
No.
Following up on your questions.
That's fine. I guess then the other question I had, so in your time here, I guess, or maybe in the past 5 years, what's been your greatest professional achievement and your greatest professional disappointment? And what did you learn from each?
Well, that's a good one. Greatest professional achievement has been that first year we got a clean audit. Mary, my boss, was awesome, and she's the reason I have this job because she hired me, and I believe she was just overwhelmed, and I had some better computer skills, and that's probably all it came down to, but we made some key hires, and we went from an audit that was 3 or 4 people on staff for a week and a half down to needing 2 people for a total of 4 days. So 8 man days instead of roughly 30. We went from 40 to 50 adjusting entries to 0. And I was in,
Who has 0 adjusting entries at an audit?
we did. The auditor said that the last couple of years.
Yeah, I know, I remember, but, yeah.
And with that, we took board meetings from our June board meeting, we now present on a May. We used to present on April. We were a month behind. So it's really not, I kind of expanded, but really kind of the improvements made in the accounting, office, customer service department, streamlining processes, saving money, doing things better. What that's taught me is it can take a long time to really make a difference because it didn't happen overnight, and you got to be willing to put in work. I'm the type of person that's not patient and would love to have everything perfect tomorrow, but it took 2.5, 3 years of, every day, it's kind of overwhelming, but you just got to put in time and work. So that normally results happen quicker for me. And I know I'm still young, but in school, I just study for a test the night before and I do well, but to put 3 years of time into something, that's probably my proudest moment. Biggest failure in the last 5 years. I'd have to go back probably 7. To me, when and this isn't related to Light and Power, but in my professional career, when I wanted to go public accounting and I didn't get an internship for public accounting, and actually Lowell Light, and as bad as it sounds, I really had to take Lowell Light and Power. And to me, that was I was going into public accounting, and this wasn't my first choice. And I was my friends are going to public, but to me now, it's probably my greatest blessing because I know I am where I'm supposed to be right now. And the next year when I had the option to go public, I said, no, I want to be at Light and Power. So at the time, that was probably my biggest failure because I had worked high school and college, and now it's internship time, and I wasn't selected. So what I learned is sometimes when a door is closed, a better door opens.
Interesting.
All right.
Thanks for that. Yeah, that was.
Question I had, recently Lowell Light and Power ratified a contract with the IBEW. What experience do you have with solving problems between coworkers and management that would help prevent future conflicts?
Well, I'm going to go back to maybe I can elaborate more on the conflict here within the department. Okay, I will. The distribution department, it's been divided. There have been people that just haven't gotten along, and it finally came to a head. Greg had announced his retirement, and for better or for worse, and I think Greg would even feel this way, he felt that if direction was coming from a different voice other than his own, because one of the 2 individuals I think had lost respect or didn't give Greg the credit or credence that he deserved. So Greg let me handle this situation, and I wasn't in charge of these employees. I didn't manage them. Really, they didn't have to listen to me. I wasn't even their boss or their supervisor, but Greg let me handle it because he knew he was going to be retired and there would be this gap. And I sat down with each one individually, took statements, talked about what happened, talked to their supervisor, and then we sat down with Anna and really just worked it out. We're such a small company that I told them something that Jim Harbaugh said when he came to Michigan. Those who are from Michigan are for Michigan. Sounds stupid, but I said those who are for Lowell Light and Power are for Lowell Light and Power. I mean, we're all on the same team. We all work here. We all get our paycheck here, and we want this place to be awesome. And I just think a lot of conflicts at a company this small can just be avoided by doing that, just communicating. I hope it never comes to the point where at a small company we have disagreements or problems where we can't negotiate something and it has to go public. But I'm a real believer that I don't think I'd let it get to that point. I really don't.
Your predecessor served on, besides the general manager, superintendent of Lowell Light and Power, served on MPPA, served on MEA,
MEA,
served on several different boards.
yes.
What direction, I mean, do you plan on, look to do the same thing, look different? What's the importance of that? And can you, help the board out by what direction?
I would like to see myself going within those two organizations.
And why?
Well, obviously, we're one of 41 municipals as part of MMEA and one of 18 that's part of MPPA. In the last year, I was elected to the MPPA Audit Committee, and since Greg's retirement, the general managers of the MPPA nominated me for the Campbell 3 chair. The Campbell 3 plant is a plant that Lowell Light and Power has part ownership in. And I said I would do it. I agree with Greg's approach that it's important for the general manager to be involved as possible, as long as it's not going to limit their ability to do their job here at Lowell Light and Power, which I still believe comes first because we're serving this community. I would pursue opportunities when available to be part of MPPA or sit on the board at MMEA, just because you're making high-level decisions, you're representing Lowell, you're putting Lowell out there in a good light. It allows you to have exposure and more in-depth conversations with MPPA staff, as well as general managers that are on the board with you. I don't see where it wouldn't be a benefit to do something like that.
If you should be appointed the general manager, knowing, obviously, that Mr. Barnes, Dr. Doug Barnes applied for this position.
Right.
Does that create, how would you handle that if you were, two things, if you were to be appointed the general manager, and then the flip, if Doug was appointed the general manager?
I actually had a conversation with him about this yesterday. I said, hey, Doug, we're both interviewing for the same position. And I said, doesn't create any weirdness or animosity. He said, no. He said, both of our beliefs that both of us have institutional knowledge. We can kind of just hit the ground running. There's not going to be this long transitionary period if you don't know what you're getting with somebody outside the community, what the dynamics of the community are, what the dynamics of Lowell Light and Power are, the council, the history. But in terms of my relationship with Doug, I have a great relationship with Doug. We talk every week. If Doug is the person, and I'll respect him for that. And I would hope he does the same, and I think he would based on conversations with him yesterday. But, it's the board's decision who's going to lead the company the best, and I would hope both him or myself would have the respect of the board to believe that. So I would not have a problem with it, personally. Be disappointed I didn't get the job, but I would respect him.
Go ahead. I mean, I keep asking.
No, there's one I had that, you mentioned, or there was the discussion earlier about, being young, whatever, but.
Yep.
So, well, it was brought up, regardless. So my point being was, where do you see yourself in 20 or 30 years?
Working in the
Do you
electric
think like that
industry.
at all? Have you ever had some thought, here's what I want my career, my life to look like?
Right.
I mean, at least I know I thought that way at that age, so
Right.
I'm asking the question, but
Yeah, that's a fair question. I'm a person who always wants a challenge. And right now, that's why I want to be the general manager of Lowell. I mean, not just because of the challenge, because I know I can do it. I want to be here until I feel I've seen everything through, however long that takes. I want this place to be perfect. I want the communication to be there. I want gas to be here. I want to help the city however it can to reconstruct these roads. I want Lowell to be the next place to be. Zeeland's similar to Lowell, but I want Lowell to be my community if I have that chance. I could be here till I'm 55. I don't see myself leaving if I were given this position. I couldn't say to you, yep, 5 years, my plan is to use this as a stepping stone and move to the MPPA, if that's what you're getting at. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I would like to be here and see it through. Because I think we've made incredible strides, but I think there's a lot more potential.
Lowell's a great place to raise your family.
I know. It reminds me a lot of Zeeland, but I want this to be me and Lindsay's thing.
They're just not as tall and blonde as they are over in Zeeland.
I'll breed them in here.
Okay, okay.
We'll bring them. They'll be basketball players, probably not big football players, but. No, at Hope, I was a Baker Scholar, and I went back for a Baker Scholar reunion, and we all got to say something, and I kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but at the time when my dad said it to the whole group, I necessarily didn't believe it, and he's been involved with Zeeland his entire life, and so is my mom. And my dad said, if you want to make a significant impact and difference, be prepared to stick it out 20, 25 years. And I believe that. I really do. You can't just, 5 years and leave. If you really want to make a significant difference and impact, you have to be willing to stick it out. And I've seen it done with my family and my grandfather, lifelong Zeeland resident, my grandma, my parents. So I'd like to be able to look back and somebody say that about myself, or, at least be proud of that.
Any questions for us? I mean, again, it's a little bit different relationship because we know.
I did write down a few questions.
Sure.
I've led 3 board meetings. I've been here for 13 weeks. Is there anything, in your opinion, that I could have done better, that I lacked, where things fell off, where the utility went downhill, or I just want honest feedback for the future. And different expectations for me, things I could have done better, things you'd like to see out of me or the position where I didn't do.
Jokingly, I mean, I'd say, keep the meetings going. Don't let Perry drag it out for 3 or 4 hours.
Well, yeah. Well, I tried, this last one was shorter, but then you guys, after I left, still were here till 10.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, I don't want to be complacent. I want to keep doing the best I can.
Well, I've got one I can think is, be, it's a little awkward, I guess, in the setting, but I guess, don't be afraid to be critical if there's really something to criticize. You're very optimistic and energetic, which is awesome, but there are times when discussing something you tend to kind of gloss over. I wouldn't say gloss over, that's not the right term, but you kind of focus on the positive things.
Right.
Which generally that's a very good approach, but there is some time to kind of acknowledge that, well, this didn't go so well, here's why, we learned that, and we're going to do this now instead. And rather than just kind of saying, we're doing this because this is better, and kind of not acknowledging that the analysis was done to look at that, hey, there was a flaw that we fix kind of thing.
Right.
And I don't, I hesitate in calling that a issue, but, you asked for some feedback, so I thought
Right.
that's one I've
Call it
I've
for what it
seen.
is.
Yeah. Just if there is something that was an issue, just say it, then go, because the positive stuff is still there, so,
Right.
and like you said, kind of that the numbers speak for themselves, so,
Right.
let the numbers illustrate what we found, what we learned, and what we're going to do next,
Right.
but that's
I
probably the only thing I can think of right now.
I asked this of
Might
Doug.
have,
Where do you see, obviously, we're working, the board's working, you're working, everybody's working to get the biodigester up where it needs to be without odor, et cetera. Can you just touch on that? And do you see, again, currently that's privately owned, but we have the option, once it's up and running commercially in 5 years, to purchase that. Is that a good decision? Is it a bad decision? Is it?
In terms of right now, it is a unique situation since it's owned privately and operated privately, and they just have to deliver us the power. It's unique that it's on our facility. I will put as much pressure and heat, with all due without being a prick about it, but to get things going. But it's their operation. You told me I wouldn't buy it, knowing what I know 5 years from now. Now, that lot could change in 5 years, but based on the fact that they're not 100% in the last year, that gives me concern. They've had many things they've had to tweak, things that they didn't think about that they had to re-engineer and fix. I haven't seen those financials, so if I saw the financial, again, I don't want to go back to economics, but if I can prove that it's a cost benefit to own for the customers, sure, we'll inherit the expenses if the power's cheaper and you can make it economically justifiable. But right now, knowing what I know, it's hard to see me willing to buy in 5 years.
Okay.
No, appreciate the honest answer.
Andrew told me to be honest.
You said you had some other questions? I just want to, in the interest of time,
Yep.
just make sure we're
Last 3
answering
minutes.
your questions.
How does, you asked me, the GM, in terms of the community involvement, the relations, what type of figure should they be? Like your feedback on how you perceive, or how you ideally would like the GM to be in terms of community involvement.
I might have a little bit different opinion than everybody else, but I think the general manager needs to be out in the community and be engaged in community organizations. I have been a big proponent, I have said it every year since I've been here, that I think the GM should be involved in Rotary, because that is the community service organization in town. There isn't another one. I think that it's important to have the general manager out there and to have that face of leadership out there. So that's, and I'm not saying Rotary is the only way to do that, but in this community, Rotary is the only service organization that we have.
Right.
And it is where business leaders gather on a regular basis.
I agree that exposure to the community is important, but I also would leave it up to the general manager to choose the arena for that. Going to the Thursday night concerts, the GM would be at council meetings and stuff, but just being out, and Greg was a very private person with his family. There was a lot of negativity that he didn't want to expose his family to, and hopefully we're past that now, but just being out in the community, I think, is important. It's social events. I don't know that it needs to be Rotary, but just being somewhat involved a little more than Greg was, just my personal point of view.
Same here. Again, that's why we changed a couple of our July and August meeting dates, so that hopefully the new general manager can attend a Thursday night. And again, I'm not saying everyone, but occasionally be at the, and that's, to me, that's also fun for you.
Right.
Is to attend the music concert Thursday nights, attend
again, I'm really big into athletic events, and the community of the school is one of the top-notch schools in the state, both academically and in some of in not all sports, but in a lot of the sports. And I think for me, it's important to occasionally attend a basketball game, attend a football game, attend a choir concert. And again, if you're living in the community and you're raised and you start a family, I know you're newly married, but if you start a family, those things are going to come natural if you're
Right.
in the community. So,
Yeah, just being visible.
Right.
Yep, which doesn't come without risk, of course. I mean, you know, that's part of the problem. You make yourself that visible, then you're much more easily targeted too. I mean, that's what the last manager found out, you know, so, the city manager anyway, and, I mean, he was much more involved, but then he also kind of paid for that in some regard.
Risk.
But I do think in the long, generally, it's good, but you do have to kind of match it to your personality. If
Right.
you're an outgoing, gregarious person, it's very easy to go to a concert and say hi to people and say, hey, I'm the city manager, and it's very genuine and authentic. If you're not that type of person, you do that, it just comes across as phony, you know? And,
Right.
And so I think you kind of want to be visible in the community, but in a way that suits who you are. So whether that means a lot of behind the scenes networking, or whether it means a lot of just being out in front of the public, or whatever that mix is,
Right.
figure out what it is and kind of be that. But I think I get the consensus from here that there is that we do want some visibility to leadership, because it's just human nature to kind of look to the person on top as a representation of the organization they run.
Right. Okay. Do I have time for one more or no?
sure.
Sure.
Sure?
Sure.
Dinner's cooking for everybody? I don't mean to put you guys on the spot, but is there anything specific that would cause any of you hesitation in for me being the next general manager?
I don't know if that's a fair question for us to answer.
No, I mean, I will answer it. No,
I mean, the only reason I ask that, if there's something that hasn't been brought up yet that's a concern of yours, and I felt like hey, maybe we haven't talked about it, or I do feel it's a strength, that's the reason I asked. It's like, oh, well, your communication is awful, Steve, but, you know, I could talk about it, you know, and how.
Opportunity to address it.
Right, that's
Yeah.
really what I was trying to get at. But you don't have to
But
answer.
I think we asked, at least for me, I think the questions we asked brought out the answers we were.
Okay, that's what I was
that would
hoping.
address any
I was just,
concerns that we would have had, so.
okay. That's all I had in terms of questions.
I'm good.
Great. Thanks
Really
for coming
appreciate
in.
you coming in and.
Yep.
It was a
I know
long
this
drive,
is-
I know.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think when you interview in a place where you already work, it
It can be a little awkward, yeah.
challenging. So I really appreciate you doing that. Glad you threw your hat in the ring and.
Thank you all for giving me the
Hard
opportunity.
decision.
Right?
Yeah.
Super.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Greg.
Yeah.
Thanks again, Steve.
Andrew, appreciate it.
Before we adjourn,